Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you may be. My name is Alan Young, and I'm the Chief Strategist of HospitalityNet, and you're viewing a session on HITEC TV. We'll be talking with Raj Singh and Robert Stevenson today about guest tech innovation, guest tech interaction, and also the world of messaging and how it's moved forward very, very quickly post-COVID. As I said, I'm very happy to have two CEOs with me today, which is awesome, of two very innovative companies. Raj, welcome.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here. And Robert, good to see you again. In terms of my background, guys, I'm Raj Singh. I'm the founder and CEO at GoMoment. We created the world's first AI-powered texting platform and guest communication platform for hotels. We serve every kind of hotel up and down the value chain. Everything from a 14-room boutique up to 4,000-room mega resorts in Las Vegas. And we've seen a huge acceleration during COVID, which is something that we're really excited to talk about. I'm sure we've seen other, components like that in the technology world, and just excited to be here. And let's dive in.
Perfect. And Robert, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Happy to be here. Good to see you, Raj. I'm the CEO of INTELITY, Robert Stevenson, and similar to Raj, we service the entire spectrum of classes of different types of hotels, all the way from, I think our smallest is 6 rooms and our largest is 3,500 rooms, and brands and all types of resorts and even some residential. And our INTELITY platform really, it revolves around guest experience. So mobile app, all the way through to in-room, smart room technologies. We tie in a bit to chat, we tie in a bit to Alexa, we tie in a bit to casting and televisions, and quite a deep integration stack. And it's been a lot of fun, and COVID has accelerated, in particular for us, contactless mobile and check-in and full flow sort of ingress to the property. So happy to be here and dig in on all these cool topics.
All right. Well, let's get started. I think one of the most interesting things to me in the past is Raj, I think if you remember, Raj and I have known each other for a little while. If you go on to Tripadvisor, you do a deep search and look for Ivy, all of a sudden you have people that are conversing or believe that they were conversing with an individual. Her name was Ivy, related to any guest requests or problems they may have had. That guest messaging component becomes incredibly relationship driven then. And the utilization of AI and machine learning, all of that aside, these people, our guests, believe the fact that all of a sudden they're talking to a human. Where do you feel that stops, or is that something that just keeps going when you're talking about a chat bot? Raj, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Alan. I think I would definitely differentiate between a chatbot, which is typically a fully automated system. You find these on many websites. And when you hit a dead end on a chatbot, there's kind of nothing there. And then you may end up in a loop or some other issue like that. Versus a digital concierge, which is what we call Ivy, because Ivy is actually this seamless blend of human expertise at the front desk, the guest services team there, as well as the AI that we've developed over tens of millions of interactions with tens of millions of guests. So, from that perspective, what we see is that Ivy certainly has, she's been very popular. She's created a lot of relationships, gotten a lot of tips for the front desk that always leads to a funny conversation when somebody walks up with a $20 bill saying, Ivy got me to my meeting on time. But what we've seen during COVID actually is, I think to Robert's earlier point, contactless guest engagement used to be an option offered to the guest, but at this point, it seems to be the main thing desired by the guests, because guests are reticent to get to communicate with anybody that they don't know already. Guests are actually using housekeeping less, as we've seen across the whole industry, because they don't want to interact with other people outside of their network. And also from a communication standpoint, it is just the safest possible choice. So we do see more relationships being made this way. Ivy's actually gotten a handwritten thank you card during the pandemic, which was a first. She's been asked for date nights and even proposed marriage in other scenarios. But in COVID, we've seen a lot of this. And on a more serious note, during the recent wildfires and other natural disasters, where phone lines actually burned down and no physical infrastructure was available to the first responders that were staying at our client hotels, our clients were able to actually communicate back and forth with the guest, relying on IB as the main piece of infrastructure, to be able to text message with the guests back and forth. We also offer WhatsApp, Line Messenger, other communication channel integrations as well. So yeah, omni-channel guest engagement is the way to build a relationship now, and certainly something that we expect will continue to accelerate.
Right. And what are your thoughts on this, Rob?
Yeah, no, I would build almost on exactly what Raj said. I think the sort of omni-channel tight relationship with the guest, whether that is more passive interactions or more active interactions through chat or messenger types of situations, absolutely. I think it's become the norm, right? I look at COVID and I kind of talk about as hotels sort of come out of and guests are starting to retravel, and people got trained, right? Like I got trained during COVID. They went to restaurants. They did QR codes for menus, pretty much anything that anybody wanted to buy anywhere. They learned how to do it digitally if they weren't already doing it. And it really has flipped from something that was kind of maybe a want from a hotelier perspective to give guests an option to go down the digital path. But, some hotels really, hey, I prefer to handhold my guests. I prefer to introduce them to the property, and I want them to come to the front desk. And it's really changed the narrative to be, no, that this is really more of a dominant way of doing things, a digital path. And it's great to see. It doesn't mean that the high touch path is gone by any stretch. I travel frequently, and I appreciate both directions. And so I think providing both solutions is paramount. And I think for us at INTELITY, really, the ingress period I mentioned a little bit at the spool up of the show here has really been a big point, right? Which is how can we get guests come in a comfortable way, get a mobile app, start interacting with the property pre-arrival, and then as they come in, hey, can they bypass the front desk? Can they use mobile key? Can they do things that limit interaction? We've just seen that go through the roof. There's nothing good to say really about COVID, except for I think from our perspective, it has enabled some of this sort of technology to get more in the forefront. Hey, it is available. It's very realistic to implement and to engage guests with.
For sure. And, COVID has been a catalyst for so many things, good, bad, and awful. And one of the things that we had as an industry to deal with was that immediate knee-jerk gut reaction that our industry smoked. We are the tip of the spear, and what the heck's going to happen next? During that time, a lot of companies will cocoon and say, okay, this is problematic. Let's make sure that our payables are in order, our receivables, let's get them as quickly as possible. Let's make sure we're keeping control of our costs. But sometimes they forget that this is a really good time to start looking at the future. So Robert, what did INTELITY do, knowing the fact that you had maybe a little bit of time to do some in-depth thought seeking about your business? What did you do, and did it affect the roadmap of the product?
Yeah, no, great question. And the dark times were certainly there. We had I've told the story a couple of times, but last April, a year ago, out of our entire hotel network, which is hundreds and hundreds of hotels, not one was really in communication with us. Right? In the middle of April, I think there was about a 2-week period there where I think we had contact with maybe 10 hotels, and the rest were furloughed staff, shut down, and it was absolute misery on the horizon. And we've come such a long ways. During that time, it wasn't that long. I would say it was probably about May, June. You started seeing, stateside here, some states really pushing to try to reopen and get things going. And you saw hoteliers reaching out immediately. Hey, how can we get contactless? How can we get mobile key? How can we get mobile check-in? How can we get things like chat going? How can we get things where we can interact with guests seamlessly? And just an immediate sort of, I would say, almost a knee-jerk reaction on that alone, and that accelerated our roadmap. We were already working on that. We already have been doing guest check-in digitally and mobile key for 4.5 years, 5 years now, and it just accelerated. Hey, we need more integrations with locks. We need more integrations with our PMS partners. Everything we can do, in terms of making the flow more seamless, sell all that kind of stuff. So. the entire sort of spectrum of that ingress, it was pretty much all hands on deck from an engineering and product perspective to make that really great. And what was cool in terms of using a mobile key, 4 or 5 years ago, no longer is, right? Like now people intuitively get it. So now it doesn't need to be 6 steps to explain to people how to do it. Now it can be 2 steps, right? And challenging the team with why can't it just be 1 step, right? And so that was where we really focused last year. And we actually put other parts of the roadmap, interesting things, some AI stuff. We put some data stuff on the back burner just to focus on, hey, there is a real need in the industry, a real need for guests to get this kind of technology to come back and travel, and that benefits everybody, right?
For sure. And doing research and understanding what people are going to be looking for has always been problematic, but now we kind of have more news sources than we know what to do with, also telling us what people are looking for, which is helpful. Raj, how did Go Moment deal with maybe some downtime?
Yeah, that's I don't wish to relive those times, and I don't wish that on anyone. Certainly, we saw a huge decrease in the number of guest engagements on our platform, about a 95% decrease there. Pretty much immediately in March and April of 2020. Beyond that, though, to Robert's point, things came roaring back very quickly, and our technology team actually had quite a challenge on their hands because not only did the levels come back to 2019 levels, but went way beyond that because guests are reliant now on contactless guest engagement and expect this kind of digital guest service component everywhere that they go, not just at the hotel. So one interesting stat on this is that McKinsey released a study showing that there were the acceleration in digitization of guest communication channels and customer communication channels got accelerated almost 7 years in COVID. So, I think the share used to be about 35% of all interactions were digital. Now it's well over 50%. And from a trajectory standpoint, it is exactly what's borne out in our data as well. We see now, 2 to 2.5 times the kind of usage that we saw previously. A lot of that is driven actually by guests just using the system more to service more different use cases. So the big thing that Go Moment did during the pandemic that that has been a huge hit with our customers is we sharpened our focus in the same way that the industry sharpened its focus on the bottom line. So we developed multiple new commerce revenue driving features. We've actually developed an entire new product called Marketing Power Kit that allows hotels to be able to market to their guests even when they're not on site, which is very different from our flagship product Ivy, which is all about the on-site service and marketing and promotional component. So for Marketing Power Kit, we're driving now 30x ROI for customers when they're doing marketing to guests that have previously been on premises but aren't currently enjoying the facilities. And on the in-state promotional side, one of our clients actually was able to benefit from about $10 million in additional mobile ordering revenue because guests felt less comfortable coming into their restaurants as things reopened. And they're now using Ivy to begin that journey and be able to place an order, have it either go pick it up or have it delivered to their room. So $10 million in 12 months immediately ensuing from the pandemic that they were not getting from our program prior. That has exactly been the name of the game for us is, focus on the client's bottom line and everything else will take care of itself.
Right. Obviously, a lot of us have been watching 9/11 shows over the last few days just because of the 20th anniversary. And one of the most amazing images that I remember is actually seeing the radar screens for air traffic control and watching the skies just kind of all the planes land in their respective airports and get down fast. And obviously that had an impact on people and still does to this day. Raj, how have you and your colleagues, your staff, how have you been dealing with COVID from a non-technology perspective?
Yeah, it's been challenging. Certainly, I think we already had half of our team was already remote first prior to the pandemic. Certainly, at this point we are all majority remote. We still kept our offices because we have some folks that love to go in and kind of get that office feel. So we're squarely in the hybrid camp at this point, but we treat remote employees as first-class citizens and are really mindful of ensuring that we are providing a level playing field for the incredible amount of talent that has actually gotten unlocked during COVID. So there are some silver linings for us to look forward to. Outside of that, our team, I think, has gotten better connected with more video. We also take video breaks just to make sure people aren't getting overwhelmed, being on Zoom all the time. And separately, we've also adopted a couple of different programs internally, including step challenges that sync with everybody's devices, regardless of what platform they use. And we actually have these challenges where the whole team is going to, walk from Los Angeles to New York, for example, and every step that every team member takes around the globe actually counts towards that goal. So in a way, actually, post-COVID, we feel more connected and more in sync with each other than we did prior, because remote is now just the kind of way that everything happens.
Yeah.
And separately, I think that we're just taking more time to invest in mental health, in well-being, and other initiatives that previously were not as top of mind. But certainly with this incredibly traumatic event that we've all lived through together, I think it has bonded us in a way that few things could have.
Yeah. How about you and your team, Robert?
Yeah, very very similar to Raj. We started pre-COVID. We had a partially hybrid workforce already. Particularly our engineering, and support teams have been remote. We have a lot of deployments engineers that operate remote, and so the concept of people dialing in and having Zoom meetings and things like that wasn't that unusual to us. However, there's always in every pool of employees, people that really like and enjoy working in the office. They need to work in the office to conduct their work streams effectively, and that's been hard to sort of get your arms around. But we have, and we've tried to be very disciplined about on-off time with video and doing social activities. I think I like the steps idea. I think our go-to that's been we've had two that have been really good favorites. One has been an origami zoo, we call it, where the employees we have a specific person in our team that does origami and is taught, like, I guess probably much the whole company at this point, different kind of origami animals to create. And we also have a cocktail hour about every other week. And so we usually put that on Fridays, after a long week. But we've had also sort of same sort of social activities to sort of bond the team. And I think it's introduced new connections. I wouldn't say that they would be better than the in-person connections, but there's certainly new connections. And we're very much looking forward to, being more together. We've had some of the first sort of cross country. We have an office in Los Angeles, an office in Orlando as our principal offices. We've had sort of first sort of cross country, team swapping and people showing up. We had a product planning session where we had a bunch of people in Orlando recently. And so we're just kind of getting back into that zone. But many of the same things that companies have employed thus far. But it has been tricky. And, I would say last year was, we don't know what's going to happen. It's a big question mark, and gradually sort of claw your way out of it and figure it out.
Yeah, makes really good sense. I was out for a walk the other day, Raj, and I walk every day now just because I think that's a COVID thing to do. And I'm a watch guy, so I don't have a smartwatch, and I forgot my phone. And that's the only thing that's been keeping an eye on my steps. And I was so pissed, excuse my language, when I got back. I was like, oh, no, do I have to go do that again? Or can I shake my phone really fast to make sure that I got it? But I'm pretty sure I can't walk to Seattle from Toronto. But maybe that's a good
not
choice.
At that rate, Alan. But I think it raises an interesting question that, if you walk and your steps weren't counted, did you even walk at all?
There you go. That's right. Very true. So in that line of employees and health and wellness, et cetera, obviously the employees in the hospitality industry have been slammed. And today, I don't want to say this out loud, but I will. I don't wish being a frontline employee on many people, because the way that our entire environment has changed, the way people react to things, everybody's nerves are at the top of the spectrum, it seems. And so we haven't seen the number of people get back into the industry that we need to in order for it to function properly. So with labor shortages regionally or globally, do you see the applications that you've built helping out from that perspective, making, I never want to say making somebody's job redundant, because that's not a good thing to do, but making sure that you can supply the service and still that relationship to the guest, and maybe, give the employees a bit of a breather, Raj?
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. I think the latest number that we've seen is 1.73 million jobs at U.S. hotels that are still unfilled, and we've been talking about the staff shortage for over 6 months. 6 months at this point because we saw it in our data very quickly. We monitor exactly how quickly every guest is getting service on our platform across 50 million plus interactions. It's very easy for us to see the trend line when the staff are impacted. Then of course the average response time goes up on the platform, and we can very easily see that. So of course, as an AI and automation driven solution from day one, about 7 years ago, we certainly did not expect COVID. We did not expect, any kind of, pandemic to break out, of course, but we did see a trend early on, even in 2014 and 15, that labor was going to continue to get more expensive, that staff are just overloaded. And by the way, my family have owned and operated hotels and resorts. We come from the industry, we get this, and we believe in the human touch. But one thing that I saw is that anytime our general manager needed something done, the first line of defense was the front desk folks, and their task list was already 42 things long. You're adding another 7 things there, and they're making minimum wage, and they're constantly under pressure from guests. And again, this is all pre-COVID, so of course, with COVID, mask mandates, some uncooperative guests. We've all seen the videos from airlines that I think make the rounds on the internet a little bit more than misbehaving guests, for example. But we've seen it all, and our what we did in response to this is invest further in automation, because we don't believe that your front desk person that used to cost $9, $10 an hour in many states, now they're costing $19 to $20 in many areas, and still cannot be hired fast enough. That front desk person should not be answering, what time does the gym close? What is the Wi-Fi password? All of that easy stuff, Ivy can take care of it. And we've actually invested in our automation to make it 3 times as good as it was 3 years ago. So our automation rates are now closer to 50 to 60%. Ivy can serve as that first line of defense, and it's not just an assistant for the front. It's not just an assistant for the guest, but also for the front desk who need that assistance at this point. And we don't see any signs of this staffing shortage abating, because the competition in the labor market has gotten so intense, not just from other hotels, but also from companies like Starbucks and Chipotle that are now offering $15, starting wages. Chipotle is offering a 3-year management track where you can make $100,000 a year. I think we need to invest in our people to make sure that we get there.
Right. That's great. And Robert, you've got physical products in room as well. As well as the on-property stuff. So are you finding the fact that you're able to utilize the platform and the products that you offer in order to assist with the employees and their engagement with the guests?
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar to Raj's comments. We've focused on, we call it staff optimization and workflow management and ticketing support. So, all of our guest facing technologies, particularly in the mobile side or the in-room side, either on the television or via tablet on the nightstand, for example, that's all great and can look pretty for the guests, but it has to go somewhere, right? And if it just dogpiles onto beleaguered frontline staff, that's not that helpful, right? Putting it in an organized ticketing system, a way that they can address, priority issues when they're priority issues. If there's a critical maintenance issue, great. If there's a request that can be deferred for 5-10 minutes and then dealt with, totally fine. Let's do that. And so workflow routing, escalation, right? If there is a service standard that needs to be met, and escalating that to appropriate staff or sending it to the right department, all of that kind of stuff, it has to be there, right? And we've been doing that pre-COVID. We've sharpened the pencil a bit during COVID, and in particular, coming out of COVID. I frequently visit our hotels. So like if I'm in a particular city for whatever reason, I will go and stay at one of our properties. And I can tell you, it's just the front line, it's been miserable. I stayed at 2 different ones in San Francisco just to check in. I have a place in San Francisco, but I was like, hey, let me go check in on these hotels. Right as the city was starting to lift its bans on food and beverage and hospitality spacing and things like that. And there's like the staff are nowhere to be found. Like they've moved on to other jobs. And really to go in and train the existing staff that are remaining and saying, hey, look, you can use workflow tools. You can use the guest ingress components that I was talking about earlier to help, bypass some of the inquiries, bypass maybe a check-in, all of that stuff saves time. We have quite a few hotels that are unionized, and so we have the union sort of, rates of how long each task takes. And it begins to accumulate, over time, every checkout that we can save, every check-in that we can save, every dining order that we can type through a tablet and save a phone call, and maybe even a frustrated guest if they're calling and calling and calling, and nobody picks up for 2 or 3 minutes. So we've been very focused on that, and I think Raj has really highlighted. I think AI is for us really a next destination to continue to invest. We do some automation now, not at the level that Gomom is doing through the chat facility, but being a little smarter about routing things and trying to address and deal with things in a even a more automatic way than just workflow management.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see, what people are expecting these days too, and I think that's part of the challenge as our industry is coming back. No doubt about it. The guests are expecting an experience that they got previously pre-COVID, and sometimes we just can't give it to them. And obviously that makes people pretty grumpy. And as I said, I wouldn't want to be a frontline employee right now. But companies like both of your companies are going to be able to help, I'm sure. So there are problems, there are issues. One would say there are opportunities, but they're also the bottom line is money. Hoteliers have to make money, and obviously the profitability within a hotel room is pretty awesome. But when you look at ancillary sales and things that are going on, we want to give guests the capability to purchase more stuff, and sometimes that's been a challenge. So, Robert, let me start with you. Have you now put in an ecosystem where, whether it's in a primary device or a secondary device, that you're working with the hotels in order to upsell and not upsell rooms? Yes, a lot of people are doing that, but there's so many things in a hotel now that people can purchase, and sometimes they don't even know that they want to, but if they see it, they'll buy it.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. So pre-COVID, I actually was an investor in this company and then came to sort of run it. And about a year in, I was working with the Hotel 11 Howard in New York. It was one of our sort of marquee, independent properties there. And the food and beverage team, I was meeting with them, and they were like, hey, we jury rigged your in-room dining system, and we've created a retail store. Like they were selling, I don't remember, it was custom whiskey or yoga mats or whatever it was at the time. And they had literally replicated the dining system and created a retail outlet. And I walked away from that conversation. I was probably out of the hotel 5 minutes, and I was on the phone with the product team going, we need to do what these guys have done and actually give them a facility to sell stuff. And so we do have a retail component. It's on the tablets because we found that's a little bit better than trying to sell something through mobile. But we absolutely have that available to every hotel if they want to sell stuff, sell bedding, sell yoga mats, sell whatever it is that they can go and do that. But it is really about, for us and guest experience, it really is about non-room revenue and what can we drive. And so, on the food and beverage side, forced modifiers. Hey, did you want this nice glass of Cabernet with your steak, right? In a case of a dining order over a phone, that might be a missed beat, right? People are trained to do that, like to offer a glass of wine, but they might be, low staff situation. They're just trying to get off the phone to get to the next phone that's ringing, and they might miss that, right? So, every opportunity where we can do an upsell, we try to take advantage of that. But it is tricky. A lot of times hotels haven't, they're just focused on, like the basics, and they haven't been able to successfully explore this. And so that's one of the things we try to do when we go in and we install. We're like, look, you have a retail component. Would you like to take advantage of it? I think a next future thing is like, look, could INTELITY or maybe it's something in Go Moment. It's like, could we find stuff that we can bring in and say, hey, if you don't want to take advantage of retail, perhaps there's a branded thing that we can do for you, Mr. Hotelier. Would you like, selling these great robes or something like that? And obviously everybody partakes in the upside. So Absolutely, it's a big focus, and we're measured. INTELITY, frankly, is measured by non-room revenue when it comes down to the green dollars.
Yeah, there's an interesting company called Bokun that was purchased by Tripadvisor that was building a cross-selling ecosystem for tours, activities, hotels, restaurants, etc. in Iceland, and Tripadvisor went and snapped them up. I'm not too sure whether Tripadvisor has done much with them, but that's the ecosystem around a hotel can definitely be leveraged. There's no doubt about it. Raj, what are your thoughts?
I think what's old is new again, Alan. Would you like fries with that? I think is a good analogy to exactly what Robert was mentioning. We saw hotels get very focused on that bottom line and also treat revenue not the same, right? So, for example, our casino resort customers, $1 of gaming revenue is much higher margin than a dollar of food and beverage revenue versus $1 of room revenue, and those things have gotten appropriately prioritized and analyzed in this time frame. One of the things that we did, as I mentioned earlier, we've really focused on the commercial aspects of the guest stay, getting them an extra room night when they've stayed for 3 nights. We know it's a drive-up guest and they don't have a flight itinerary to get back to. Smartly targeting them, anticipating that they may be able to extend their stay. We've driven millions in revenue just in 12 months ensuing COVID with that kind of offer. Same thing with that mobile ordering component that we're able to essentially understand what the guest wants and then connect them with the right provider for it. And mobile ordering actually has resulted in tens of millions of revenue here. So one of the most interesting things that we've seen is that hotels actually have the ability to start to take revenue away from some of the folks like Uber Eats and Grubhub and Lyft that may have taken revenue away from them in the previous cycle. Now that we're getting more technologically sophisticated. For example, some of our clients actually have the data on when a guest is actually landing via flight number so and so, and we can actually send a push notification and a text message on Ivy to that guest saying, "Welcome to our fair city. Would you like us to send you a limo?" It's that kind of service that can really go above and beyond their Uber experience, and they can just respond yes to a text message. Everything else is taken care of for them. And that kind of anticipation of needs is something that we've invested in very heavily. And we don't just see it as an upselling, but rather an upserving of the guest. If you can truly understand what it is that they're going to need next and be able to provide that. And certainly there are just immense merchandising opportunities, I think, within the hotel experience, exactly to Robert's point, that are yet to be tapped. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, nothing irks me more, and I don't run hotels, but I've been in the business for so long. Nothing irks me more than walking through a lobby and then seeing somebody with a pizza bag or whatever, and oh, the hotel just lost that money.
Yeah.
But if the hotel actually proactively says, okay, we're going to put in runners, you order the stuff and we'll go pick it up for you, then that's pretty awesome. I'm sure there's an ROI and a business model sitting right there for them to proactively go after that market. And on the flip side, the Ubers and likes, they're challenging restaurants as well on that side of the equation. So it's quite interesting. And so when you walk into a hotel and you're sitting across the table from them and they are challenged with these issues, Rob, how do you get them to fully understand what it is you're talking about and how it's going to be beneficial for them? Because one thing, hoteliers are not really open to change at times. Not everyone. I don't want to lump everybody in the same bucket. But how do you go ahead and how do you give them guidance and consultative guidance about, embracing the offerings that you have and implementing new and innovative technologies to take away a little bit of the hassle?
Yeah, no, great question. I was going to bolt on a little bit to the last question too. One other thing that has popped up too, and it was happening a little pre-COVID, but I've seen it rearing its head again this spring, and as we've kind of coming out of the pandemic in the States, is non-guest revenue as well being a potential impact. And so we've focused a lot in that area, particularly around food and beverage, right? Where a restaurant, casino is a great example that Raj was mentioning, right? Las Vegas casino, right? People are walking through the casino to go to a restaurant, right? But could you promote that in your mobile app? Could you promote that in a chat vector? Could you promote that in a way to get that non-guest lured in through your sort of digital activities? And so I think that's been also a focus of what people have been looking for in terms of driving non-room revenue. So a big area, and particularly as new hotel construction is thinking about, not only the hotel, but also residential components, and at the ground level, restaurants that are facing out and facing in, that's a very common sort of trend that's going on, and sort of digital embracing of it. To answer your question though, on how do you get hotels, sort of like on board with, hey, here's something it's going to require a tech implementation. There's probably some tech stack maneuvering that needs to be done. How is this going to be beneficial to me? I'm busy with 20 things, and I don't need number 21, necessarily in the moment. A lot of it is to the prior question. A lot of it is, hey, you've got a situation here where you've got people coming out of COVID. You've got a situation where people do want, even pre-COVID, digital options in the way that they approach travel, right? Particularly a younger demographic. They're used to like growing up digital, right? Like they only know the smartphone as the way that they interact with a vast majority of things in their lives, right? And you don't want to leave that guest behind, right? And you can, the stats are out there. You don't have to go very far. You can just Google smartphone usage and adoption, and the billions, nearing trillions in the mobile ecosystem that is sort of sitting out there. And so it's kind of an overwhelming, like, okay, we have to do something along these lines. Now what, right? And I think that's where, for a Go Moment, for an INTELITY, for our competitors, it's like, hey, position yourself for what's the best fit. And, when we talk to hotels, it's always, hey, we're not right for every hotel, right? We're a big guest experience platform. We have a lot of touch points, but sort of saying, hey, across the platform, here's what probably makes sense, right? You're a luxury hotel and you really want to make sure your room is up to date. Perhaps a tablets direction is the right way to go. Maybe you're a branded property, you've already got mobile app stuff going on. Mobile app may not be the right thing for you, but perhaps you're a large independent resort where mobile apps do make sense. And it's sort of like taking through, hey, here are all the kind of options, hearing them, hearing their feedback, and then positioning it in a way that's like, hey, this is going to be a fit for you. It's a project that is actually doable, rather than trying to do, 20 different things all at once and having, a customer sitting installing for a year. That can be a big downside. But it does come back to, what's the ROI look like? How is this going to benefit my guest? I think we've tipped the point, as we talked about earlier in the call, about it's more of a need to have than it used to be. Digital sort of technologies is more of a, if you don't have it, you're probably nowhere. But actually sort of tailor fitting what makes sense to each property. It's really a listening, sitting down, consultative kind of discussion.
And Raj, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the consultative sale and the making sure the fact that you're giving them what they need versus selling them something?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I'm happy to report, Alan, that hotels are more open to adopting new technology than we've ever seen in in this space. I think COVID has really opened everyone's eyes to the fact that technology is not a cost to be minimized, but rather an investment to be maximized. And that's the kind of approach that, certainly I was in the room with about 20 CIOs from and leaders from the hotel side of things, and the discussions around not do we need this, but rather the discussion is much more around how do we get this done, how do we make it cost effective, how do we make it how do we make the CFO happy with the expense that this may add, and how do we not just recoup the money but actually realize an ROI on our technology investment. So the conversation has shifted dramatically, which is important because the guest has shifted, and as we talked about earlier, the staff has shifted. So the whole ecosystem, it kind of looks and feels the same, and the sign on the outside of the building might be the same, but really the internals of our industry have completely shifted. So people are more receptive to it, and I think that most of our conversations, rather than telling people about what texting is, which we used to have to do a few years ago,
Right.
and why they need it, and what AI is, which again we used to have to educate the industry on. At this point, everyone is conversant. Everyone knows exactly what the stuff is, and urgently needs it because they cannot find staff to do the same things that our system can do, for example. So Our conversations are much more focused at this point on the commercial aspect, on the ROI itself, and we make it really risk-free and easy for people to get started. I think that we have most of our clients up and running in 2 weeks, assuming there are no delays on their side. And we also will do occasionally things like money back guarantees, because we are so confident that the ROI is there in the platform, because we've validated over and over hundreds of different times, across a disparate kind of customer base. So I would say that that's one of the biggest things. The other thing is that we're also helping find customers efficiency. So if they tell us, hey, my biggest problem is Sunday morning, I've got a huge checkout line and I don't have enough staff, right? And that people are waiting for 45 minutes and some people are missing their flights as a result, right? So if they tell us that's their biggest problem, then we address that with the platform. So I think INTELITY is very similar in that it's a really robust ecosystem. There are a lot of different pieces, a lot of different offerings. Same thing with the Go Moment software platform. And we can actually tune the dials on any one of the components to solve the exact need that the client has. And we like to start with just that one single biggest, pain point, whether it's checkouts, whether it's driving more room service revenue, whether it is increasing occupancy by selling more room nights to the folks that are already in-house. So, we like to move the needle in a big way right out of the gate, and then build on that success. And, now we have some customers that have renewed into 7 and 10-year kind of relationships with us, based on the success that we drove for them initially, and we'll continue to innovate and build and deliver on great results there.
Do you think that there are any products that are in the market today that are being used by hotels that, because of COVID, are going to become end of life? Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting question. I don't really think that's going to be the case. It's certainly the hospitality tech and property tech sort of ecosystem is a tricky one. I think companies have, they get in and kind of like establish yourself and build a base. It takes a lot of effort. It's not for the faint of heart. But I think most of the technologies pre-COVID still have validity post-COVID. I think it is a bit more what we've talked about on this on this show is really, can we get in and help in areas that are more impactful? Similar to what Raj was saying is right, out of the gate, can an AI solution help alleviate sort of lack of staff, or can a workflow or ticketing system like we offer also alleviate and help manage getting to guests in a priority fashion at the right time in the right way, right? And so I think, as people have offered technology solutions, really it's about, hey, can you lean in a direction that makes more sense now versus anything being totally obsolete? There's been certainly some areas that haven't taken off as well. We were doing some work with smart mirrors for a while pre-COVID. Not a lot of traction there. I think that the time is still maybe out there for that kind of device in a hotel room. But, I think, if you kind of look at every product that sort of you see them at the HITEC floor, almost everything still has relevance, but it might need to lean in a certain direction or focus in a certain direction that helps people in new ways that maybe weren't on the product roadmap 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, I'm pushing 60, so I'm not a big fan of smart mirrors. They force you to look at yourself, and times like, oh no, I really don't want to see that. Raj, what do you think? Are there any things that might become obsolete that are in use today?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and a somewhat tricky one, Alan. I'll start with sharing the observation that I think anything that's not driving immediate ROI is definitely going the way of the dodo. So, for example, I brought up this example earlier of one of our clients that came to us and they said, hey, we've got 300 people queued up every Sunday morning. It's not a good situation. Lobby is filling up. This is pre-COVID, of course, where safety, thankfully, at least wasn't as much of an issue. And they said that they invested something like $50,000 to $100,000 in this like TV integrated checkout system. And it was, it's not one of the smart TV kind of systems we know and love today. It was a little bit more old school. And they told us in their giant hotel, almost 3,000 rooms, I think 14 people per week were using that checkout. The first week that we deployed smart checkout on Ivy, mobile checkout there, we got over 28,000 people using it. and it just blew everything out of the water. And of course, the cost basis was a fraction initially, based on that deploy. So I think that ROI lens is going to be brought to everything. I think the CFOs are all going through their line items for technology with a red pen and just crossing off anything that's not delivering the highest ROI possible. And I think that threshold and the envelope for that has gotten pushed up thanks to COVID, because guests are now more comfortable, using a tablet, texting back and forth with the hotel, etc. And they're more not just accustomed to it, but they actually expect it now, right? That's become the first communication channel, is the digital one, and the in-person one and the phone one are now secondary and tertiary, respectively, rather than it being that in-person and phone used to be the primary and the digital ones were the secondary backup ones. So that's one observation there. Another couple of interesting things is that I think that the shedding that I think we're talking about here in the hotel industry is going to happen more on the process side than on the technology side. I think Robert is correct that technology will be mostly additive from our vantage point. But for example, why were we cleaning everyone's room every single day and giving them fresh towels and fresh linens and being environmentally not as friendly, when today we've seen guests don't actually have that expectation and they're completely fine with you cleaning? If they're staying 3 nights, just clean on the way out or something like that. And on request is the new model. So that kind of, OpEx, I think we can reduce significantly. And with Ivy, we're actually actively helping our hotel client partners deflect and reduce the number of housekeeping requests and be more thoughtful about that, because some guests only want their bathroom cleaned, some guests only need their bed linens changed, and right now it's just this kind of all or nothing binary kind of thing, and we're helping move that into a more modular, decoupled kind of experience. So that is something that we think is going to happen across the whole industry. We're going to find these areas of procedures that we set the guest expectation on, and then of course worked hard to deliver on. But with the shortage in housekeeping staff, especially, and frontline staff, like we talked about, we have to get smarter and more efficient with all of these components. And I think that that is something that we're seeing everywhere. And separately, anything that's requiring CapEx, I think, is very, very difficult. So the smart mirror thing, I agree with. I think any hardware items in the hotel as well. Again, now you have to not just put the device in there and maintain it and fix it in case it breaks, but also you have to worry about disinfecting it after every single use to make sure that there's no spread of germs, etc. So I think hotels have just gotten more. We have more to worry about as an industry, and I think that's manifesting in fewer moving parts in our end product that we deliver to guests.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, gentlemen, we're coming up to the close of this session, and if you wouldn't mind both giving me some closing remarks or comments, that would be great, and talk about HITEC upcoming. Robert, if you wouldn't mind starting.
No, I mean, we're super excited about HITEC coming up, and sort of seeing some familiar faces, maybe some new faces at the show, and seeing sort of some turnout. Right, it's last year's virtual, I think, being in person is really what the show's about, and connecting with people face to face. So we're excited about that. And we're showcasing our full platform and some of the things we talked about earlier that were on our roadmap and that we accelerated through COVID. So really a lot on mobility and full flow check-in and ID verification, card on file, not on file, and all the crazy permutations of an inbound guest. I think, what we've really seen as an industry is just a tremendous amount of resilience. I always try to, I'm talking to people about the tough times that have occurred through COVID. There was articles showing up in newspapers, major newspapers and websites and such, Q3, Q4 last year. Oh, hotels are not going to make it, right? They're going to be foreclosed upon if they're in debt or have a substantial loan or just run sort of out of cash. And hotels have smartly used PPP and used all kinds of tricks and techniques to sort of survive from a financial perspective too. What we've seen is really a new wave of travel. We've seen travel perking up. The amount of install requests from people that got sort of engaged with us last year, it just went through the roof by February, March, April this year. And so travel is not back full force globally. There's certain countries under lockdown, but the hotel industry, I think, in North America really has been leading the charge on reopening, taking advantage of some of the digital technologies that we're talking about here. And the future is very, very bright. So I'm very excited to see HITEC as a stepping stone towards even better 2022 and 2023 and beyond.
Awesome. Raj, last thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I'll certainly super excited about HITEC. We're bringing a team and a ton of data from real life client case studies during COVID. Like we discussed on this show today, hotels are incredibly resilient. We've been around for hundreds of years. We're not going anywhere. We're getting stronger, as a result of all the shocks in the system. And we've just been blown away by the resilience, the ingenuity, and just the grit that we've seen out there in the industry dealing with these incredible challenges. We're inspired by our hotel partners. We love to co-create the future of the industry alongside these partners. And we are incredibly grateful to be part of the solution. Certainly, we faced a lot of problems as an industry. And I think that what's great to see at this point is that we are taking that 10-year, 20-year kind of time horizon and really investing and putting seeds in the ground now as an industry that will come to fruition, hopefully very quickly. But even if they don't, I think that we have the staying power and we are thinking on a long time horizon. That has been a really big blessing. And looking at the entire industry as a whole, I do think that 22 and 23 are going to be some of our best years yet, especially for those hoteliers smart enough to invest in technology to position for that leisure guest that we expect is going to be the dominant spender coming up, and especially for the connected guest that wants everything on demand and they want it now. And I think that we are in a very good position as an industry to help provide that kind of unforgettable experience that will keep that guest coming back. So
perfect. Raj Singh from Go Moment, Robert Stevenson from INTELITY. Thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. And I wish you a fantastic HITEC.
Thank you, Alan.
Alan.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Take care.